This is Chapter 7, Part 2, lecture video. Slide 16, commonly accepted scientific tests continued. Blood alcohol, typically used in DUI cases. Alcohol is absorbed into the blood at varying rates. Most common sampling techniques is breath tests, and 0.08% blood alcohol level is, if you're above that, you're above the legal limit. Blood typing, that is no longer conducted in crime labs. It is DNA analysis now. And slide 17, DNA testing. All humans have DNA in each bodily cell except red blood cells. That's used to transport oxygen. It does not have a nuclear DNA. The first practical DNA tests were conducted in 1985. There's different DNA tests. RFLP is no longer used now. Polymerase chain reaction is used to amplify copies of DNA, and short tandem repeats is an area of the human genome that is used. It is the segment that is found in CODIS, the Combined DNA Index System. Slide 18, mitochondrial DNA. That's the mother's DNA only. Nuclear DNA contains the father and the mother's, but in the mitochondria you would have your mother's DNA. The shaft of your hair only has mitochondrial. It does not have nuclear DNA. Y chromosome analysis for paternal links, familial DNA. Those areas are not found in most crime labs. The FBI might have mitochondrial DNA analysis, but most crime labs only analyze nuclear DNA. Slide 19, identification of controlled substances. Samples are screened with presumptive narcotics tests, and there's different identification tests that can be done. Gas chromatograph, mass spectrometry can be done. Infrared spectrophotometer, different microscopic tests for plant material. Slide 20, firearm evidence. Expended bullets can be looked at, and so a gun could be test fired, and the expended bullets from that gun could be compared with a comparison microscope to expended bullets found at the crime scene or in the victim's body. There's class characteristics, which is characteristics that many guns may have, such as rifling, the width of lands and grooves, but there are individual characteristics as well, which are called striation marks. That's from the erosion and wear and tear on the barrel of the gun. You also have individual characteristics from an expended cartridge casing, such as the firing pin mark, extractor, ejector marks. Slide 21, there's a whole bunch of different specialty areas in forensics. Forensic anthropology. In forensic anthropology would be an analysis of anthropology bones if you have a skeletal case. Forensic odontology would be a dentist. Forensic entomology would be insect analysis. And typically these specialists are not on the payroll for a crime lab. They are contract hired by the medical examiner's office when there's a specialized case. We have one forensic anthropologist in San Diego County, Madeline Hinkes. She also is the anthropologist for Imperial County, and she teaches full-time. So she's contract hired when there's a skeletal case. Dr. Skip Sperber has been for many years the odontologist for our county. And he had his own dental practice for many years. He's retired now. Slide 22, scientific experts and tests, footwear analysis, digital imaging, and so on and so on, computer forensics. Tests not commonly accepted, slide 23, polygraph tests. Voice stress analysis and polygraph are not admissible in court. They are used for employment for law enforcement. So if you apply and make it to the background process for a position in law enforcement, you will undergo a polygraph or voice stress analysis test, and there's a series of questions asked. Polygraph measures things that are different than the voice stress, but they both are lie detector tests. Hypnosis is also not admissible in court, but it can be used to help somebody remember events. Slide 24, United States versus Schaefer. The Supreme Court heard a case about the reliability of polygraphs. The defendant sought to admit it in a military trial. Under military law, polygraphs are inadmissible per se. Defendant claimed this violated the Constitution, and the Supreme Court ruled it is up to individual states to establish the validity of polygraph and the defendant's trial was not unconstitutional. Slide 25 talks about the employment. Slide 26, experiments. An ideal experiment, it should eliminate all possible variables. The test then change one variable and measure the result. The basic concept is valid experiments need similar circumstances repeated for each test. So the goal is for an experiment is to repeat the exact conditions that were found during the crime as close as possible. The test must have a basis in sound science, and it must conform to the established standards. In forensic sciences, scientific methodology is followed for crime scene reconstruction. Crime scene reconstruction might be bullet trajectory, it might be bloodstain pattern analysis, it could be looking at the totality of the dynamics of the scene. Scientific methodology involves 5 basic steps. The first is data collection, where you're obtaining evidence. It could be witness statements, it could be photographs, evidence collection, measurements. Second is conjecture. That's an explained action of events, explaining those actions, developing a hypothesis. Third is hypothesis formulation. So you develop what you perceive may have happened based on the data. And then fourth, you test your hypothesis through experimentation, and you try to disprove your hypothesis and any other hypothesis you bring to the table and test. And finally, 5 is theory formulation. That's if you've tested the hypothesis and you cannot disprove it, then you form a theory of what occurred. I'm not testing you on that. I do test my advanced forensic technology students on that, and they have to implement that throughout advanced forensic technology. That course is a criminalist type course, but that's not something you have to know for this class. It's just FYI that there is a very scientific basis for the various areas of forensic sciences. Okay. Slide 28 talks about procedure to admit experiments. First, the introduction. First, the party is call a party who performed the experiment. So the expert that performed the experiment. Second, lay a proper foundation. Third, ask the witness for a report on the results. Foundation. The expert must be familiar with the facts. The expert must have knowledge with the equipment and compare facts with results. The judge must accept that it is an accurate test. So the judge has to decide if something was not acceptable in the scientific community. And common admissions for experiments, time of death, that would be a pathologist that would testify to that. Speed of cars, that could be a traffic investigator. You could have a bloodstain pattern analyst. You could have a firearms expert that testifies on bullet trajectory, different things like that. Let's go straight into Chapter 8 lecture video. Still have a couple minutes. And let's look at page 209 of your textbook, Myths and Facts. Myths about documents, evidence, models, maps, and diagrams. The category myth. The category of document evidence only covers documents that the parties intended to have legal consequences. Fact. All types of documents are covered by this category regardless of the intent of the parties making the document. Myth. Only notarized documents are admissible in court. Fact. It's easier to authenticate a notarized document, but the fact that the document is not notarized won't prevent it from being admitted at trial. Myth. The term document only covers things written on paper. Fact. Documents can cover things that are paper as well as photographs, microfiche, audio recordings, video, computer files, digital data on CDs and DVDs, etc. Myth. Once a file is deleted from a computer, it can't be recovered. Fact. Forensics computer specialists can recover many files that have been altered or deleted from a computer. Myth. Hearsay does not apply to written documents. Fact. Hearsay does apply to both oral and written statements. Myth. Photograph, models, maps, diagrams are admissible at trial only if the person who made them testifies. Fact. Photographs, models, maps, and diagrams can be admitted at trial as long as someone who is able to state that the item to be introduced is an accurate representation of the real thing testifies.